Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your regular shitbag hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. We took a week off due to Thanksgiving and work schedules interrupting, but now we're back on track. Hope you all who celebrate that holiday stuffed yourself with food and problematic family discussions to your heart's content, because now it's time to dive back into the colorful world of anime. Today I will rejoin shitbag anime Skeletor Ainz and his monstrous MMO crew to check out the third season of Overlord. And after that, John and I will talk about the most relatable of shitbag gamers, the lovely Chio, and the friends opponents who join her on her road to school. So let's get this show on the road as well. We'll be right back. Alright, Overlord Season 3. As customary by now, I will not talk about the basic series setup or staff in this continuous series review. If you want to know about the basics of Overlord, check out episode 52 of our show. That's where I reviewed Season 1 and 2 of this series. Also, spoilers for Season 1 and 2 gonna run rampant, and I'm probably gonna freely talk about at least some key moments from this third season as well, because I need to explain what did and didn't work for me this time. In general, we are probably, I haven't talked with John about this, but I at least want to talk more spoilers more often in reviews of continued seasons of a show we have covered before, because by the time we cover them, that particular season has wrapped up, and if you don't want to know anything about the show, why would you start with season 2 or 3 in the first place, right? So if it makes sense, at least for those types of reviews, I think it's more beneficial to be able to not dance around the bush so much, to discuss some of the more substantial developments of long-running shows like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I was a bit miffed that we didn't deep dive really into season 3 of My Hero Academia after we finished that recording, and was like, man, I wished I could have, talked more concrete about some of those things that happened, and we didn't weren't being so vague on some of that stuff. But
we'll have our chance
in season 4. Yes, thankfully. But still, that's what we intend to do. And that out of the way, let's do a quick recap to remember where we are in the story of Overlord at this point. So when we last left the MMO junkie Ainz, who got whisked from his favorite pastime into a fantasy land and turned into a real-life OP wizard lich, he had already undertaken the first steps toward increasing the size of his dominion. He subjugated a neighboring clan of lizardmen in the second season and joined them to his ranks. He fortified Karne village and made it into a bastion for human refugees and monsters alike. And he created an alter ego hero adventurer called Momon, who gained fame, fortune, and admiration by accomplishing a bunch of MMO side quests, basically, and fending off one of his minions in disguise, who attacked the city on his order, kinda. And now he's ranked as probably the strongest of the Adamantine class adventurers, which is already the strongest adventurer class out there. So things are not looking bad for him. Meanwhile, the ruling forces of the kingdom of Reestes, I don't remember how it's pronounced exactly, where the Tomb of Nazarick, Ain's home base, materialized, are still pretty oblivious to what's the danger brewing near them, and are playing their own little political games and everything on the side. So as you can see, a lot of moving parts in terms of world building, which is definitely still one of the strongest parts in Overlord. It always has been. Slowly getting us and Ainz at the same time accustomed to the rules of this world, and then progressively increasing the scope of the geography and the number of nations and factions and characters, and giving them all different agendas and drives. This is still where the show does some of its best work in this season as well. I mentioned in my review of season 2 that things focused a bit too much on the world building and side characters for me there, but only because it was such, a stark contrast to the first season, which was very, focused on pretty much only Ainz and his core crew of servants, the Floor Guardians of Nazarick, and then, they suddenly increased the number of characters and character relations and plot threads in the second season, tenfold, probably. which at that point felt somewhat like stitched together. Like, okay, we're gonna dabble a bit into that character, and now we'll see those again. It was nice seeing a lot of the side characters again and see like, oh, those are gonna be like mainstay players, at least on the sides at this point. But it felt like, okay, we're losing sight of Ainz a bit, and I still considered him and his main servants to be the main guys of the story, and we saw kind of very little of them in the second season. And that that felt a bit, I don't know, cobbled together for me at that point. But that was probably because I wasn't really seeing the big picture yet, much like Ainz actually, which, he is not an idiot at all, but he's still always one step behind the plans of his minions, mainly Albedo and Demiurge, who, even if Ainz didn't plan for it himself, which is most of the time, interpret all of his wishes and improvised plans as grand machinations of world domination, which they, of course, then steer all their efforts towards. And those moments are still the best sources of comedy in this series. Like when Ainz is explaining why he did a certain thing, like saving a village or not killing someone, to some of his minions who don't understand it. And then Albedo and Demiurge are smirking like, "You fools, do you really think that is Lord Ainz's real reason for doing this?" And the other minions are like, "Oh," and Ainz is like, "What? And, then has to come up with a ploy to make his left and right hand guys explain his plan to him. Because, he obviously has no idea what they, saw in his initial plans, and what they're gonna do. So, to keep a lid on that and a grasp on that, he, has to think on his feet, quickly on his feet. So, yeah, those scenes are comedy gold and, made me laugh every time. But yeah, like I said, often Ainz doesn't really know where his or his minions' plots are going. So why would I? But the show title says it all, really. He's destined to become the Overlord of this realm. There might be some turns and detours on the way, but that's what the show ultimately is going for. Him increasing his ranks and taking over. All on the admittedly flimsy premise that he's trying to find and reunite with some of his old cherished MMO buddies, who might have also been transported to this world, but that's not made clear, that that's actually the case. He's just, basing that on the fact that he is here, and maybe they're there too, and he wants to rejuvenate his memories of the time they all played the game together, and that's why he's doing this. Which is kind of pretty, it's understandable from an emotional point of view, especially if you consider that he was like poor little basement nerd who didn't have much going for in his life, except for maybe his MMO thing, right? And, that's what he had his most fun time and memories of, and now that's gone, and he wants to get that back. So, okay, I get it, but it's still kind of flimsy, especially considering what's happening in this season. It's not that convincing. But yeah, I'm glad to say that season 3 is much more straightforward in that regard, in establishing what it is going for. A lot of the new characters introduced in season 1 and 2 play an important role now, and Ainz takes some very big and important steps toward world domination. We're also a bit more focused on Ainz and his core team again, as well, and to an extent, Enri and Nefiria, who are the most important human members of the cast, probably, and who are basically the heads of Karna Village at this point, the village close to Nazarick. But that's also what I was missing in season 2, and season 3 immediately starts off by giving us a fun Nazarick Floor Guardian episode, which gets us reacquainted with the main players, and it's just goofy fun all around. And the best thing is probably Albedo summoning her demon steed for the first time and not being able to ride it, because it turns out she is a virgin succubus, because she wants to save herself for Ainz. There's this thing about unicorns who can only be ridden by pure maidens. Well, hell horses can only be ridden by ladies who get down and dirty. So that was kind of a great, hilarious twist on that particular fantasy trope. She, just can't do that. Made me laugh. But after that, we get a small arc of Ainz adding some ogres and other monsters living in the area around Karna Village to his ranks. It's short and fun, but nothing really that substantial. Again, more world building. And then things get kicked into motion in a big way, though it doesn't seem so at first. A noble from the neighboring empire of Baruth is putting out a call for a bunch of adventurers to investigate a mysterious ruin in the kingdom of Riestes. Jesus, I don't remember how to pronounce the name of this nation. Let's say Riestes. Which, of course, as it turns out later, that ruin that they are supposed to investigate is the Tomb of Nazarick, Ein's home base. So we get introduced again to a bunch of new characters and then learn where they will go. And immediately it's like, oh no, these guys are so fucked. They are so royally fucked. And the show is outright saying that too, because Eins is among the ranks of those adventurers, of course, under the guise of Momon. And when someone asks him if the adventurers will survive, he says, nah, they'll probably all die. And then, of course, quickly corrects himself, to keep up appearances. But he knows what's gonna happen. And if the first season has told us anything, then that none of the side characters in the show are safe. Especially not your standard RPG party of adventurers, likable as they may be. And we get introduced to such a group of 4 again, who are very sympathetic. Overlord has always done a really good job at endearing us to new characters, only to put them in harm's way and into a lot of danger and threaten to rip our hearts out by, well, literally ripping their hearts out. And then the question as this arc progresses changes from, are some of them gonna die, to, are all of them gonna die? And this is where the show becomes the darkest it has ever been and takes a pretty definite stand on its main character. So the adventurers enter the tomb and get confronted by Ein's forces, and just from the setup, this is interesting and different again, because usually in a game or in another TV show, we would only get the perspective of the adventurers and dungeon crawlers, but this is one where we're basically seeing it all from the perspective of the final boss of the dungeon. And Eins, now more than ever, is that final boss, because this is the season where he finally becomes a full-fledged villain and will become irredeemable in the eyes of most viewers. There's no gray area here anymore. The show doesn't necessarily seem to agree on that, which is, that's where some of my gripes with that show and this season lie. But for me, there is no coming back from what he does in this arc, and more importantly, how he does it. And what it comes down to is our 4 new side characters facing off against Eins at the end of this part of the season, making some horrible misjudgments in regards to Eins' character, and not only getting slaughtered, but meeting very different, very cruel and disturbing individual fates. The show was not for the faint of heart before, with all of its gore and brutality, but what happens to these adventurers in this arc definitely takes the cake. And it's not because Eins is necessarily, what he's doing isn't necessarily because he has to keep up appearance in front of his minions, but he completely loses his cool and is being a giant asshole. And on the one hand, that is interesting because it means that the show is doubling down on its interesting perspective in, that the main protagonist of the series is a true bad guy. On the other hand, I wonder if the author plans to take Eins down for that in the end. Because if not, I see me dropping the show on the way. Because who wants to see a genuine asshole succeed over and over again and kill innocent people left and right, like in the most cruel way possible without any comeuppance? I don't. I really don't. So yeah, building empathy for the main character of Overlord has been always this difficult tightrope walk from the get-go. Until now, they managed to make this work more or less by making him protect certain more relatable and endearing characters and mostly only kill people that are bigger assholes than he is. But this is a season where they dropped the ball on this, in my opinion. Maybe it's intentional, and I can't believe I'm drawing that comparison, and neither will you, the Breaking Bad of anime, and and eventually all his scheming and ambitions and edgelord antics, will bite him in the ass. But at this point, I kind of doubt that. I have a feeling that the author wants to paint Eins as this edgy badass you're still supposed to root for, And after this season, I can't. I just can't. I get that his home is the most important thing to him, and he wants to protect it, and the memory of his old comrades and all at all costs. But, like, come on, dude, chill the fuck out. You were just playing a dumb video game with some other dickheads. And, man, boy, does he love to monologue about how a lot of people are about to die, but he doesn't feel anything because the only thing that matters is Nazarick. Like, cool, buddy! Keep on calmly breaking it all down in video game terms. Makes you look super awesome and edgy, not like a total psychopath at all. Ha 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 ha. Jesus, like, I mean, I bet Ainz and, what was his name? Eru from Knights and Magic would love to hang out together. That guy was a little sociopath as well.
You had to remind me that existed.
Yeah, they kind of are cut from the same cloth when it comes to their relation to nerd stuff and games. Like, it's the most important thing. My nostalgia, my memories. And you, how dare you invade this? How dare you insult my friendship with my old comrades? I will kill you all and make you like the breeding ground for my minions. Oh God, Jesus. I mean, he doesn't slaughter indifferently. Like, there are some characters that he will protect, but it's mostly for selfish reasons, like buffing up his ranks, or because he thinks they might come in handy later, or just not worth his time, or whatever. He considers strong characters to be nothing more than Pokemon or draws from a gacha game at this point, and that's not really sympathetic. Like, not a sympathetic trait at all. He is the true shitbag gamer. Like, he's the worst of the worst in that regards. He's like the true gamer-gator. I don't know. Really. all that matters is the fucking game. Fuck everything else. Fuck your humanity. It doesn't matter. I'm a cool edgelord. I'll abandon my humanity if it means I can protect the memories of my video game.
Jesus.
Nostalgia. It's horrible. It's horrible. He really goes there in this season. And yeah, that didn't work for me, at least not when it comes to, like, if the show expects me to, like, root for Ainz in the coming seasons or whatever, I won't do that. I can't do that, because he showed his true colors, he showed what he truly is, a wimpy little piece of shit, and, you know, what we, you know, could garner from his monologues in the earlier season, but, you know, that he still did things there that were sympathetic and let me hope that he would, you know, go somewhere else, but he's not. He's gonna be the villain of this. So if the show doesn't accept that and doesn't do something with that, I'll be disappointed. One thing that works in this, though, is subverting the standard party of adventurers, you know, that would be the protagonists and heroes in a standard RPG, meet their tragic fate thingy, which at this point some shows have tried. Old Whipping Boy Goblin Slayer did the same thing in its first episode, at least. But I think it works much better here because we spent a lot more time with the adventurers beforehand. Overlord also doesn't reduce the horror just to its graphic imagery, but also, you know, to the psychology behind it. And also we know a whole lot more about the villains in this story. They are the main protagonists in this. So we can see where they're coming from, even if we don't agree with their harsh methods. And at least they're not faceless random goblins. And that makes all of this and all the things happening here much more emotionally engaging and harrowing. And the fact that I got so mad at Ainz for going full ruthless evil asshole because, you know, of his entitled gamer pride, because that got triggered so hard, speaks for the way they handled this here. And, you know, just on the virtue of converting this trope into something else, or subverting it, they did a good job. Of course, it sucks to suggest that it only matters when people die in a show if you got to know them, you know, well beforehand. But it definitely makes the difference between, well, this sucks, and it being legitimately heartbreaking, which it was in this case. I still don't like this turn of events because I really liked Ainz and his gang before this. But if that's what they wanted to do, they did a good job with it. And of course, Goblin Slayer might be doing something like that later in its runtime as well. I'm only talking about how it went about tearing down that trope in its first episode. But it did not work for me there And especially not when compared to Overlord's later events, because it was only focused on the shock and awe of it all, and, you know, the brutality and the gore and stuff like that, and making that the main source of horror, which I think Overlord does a much better job at that. So if you watch Goblin Slayer and like it, please feel free to write a comment and let me know if Goblin Slayer does something more along those lines later on as well, and also manages to bring some more interesting antagonists into the picture than random goblin hordes. But yeah, after these major turn of events in Overlord, Ainz basically goes into all-out attack mode. His casters, Aura and Mare, pay the Emperor of the Bahar'uth Empire a visit, say hello by killing a bunch of knights in his castle at once, and invite him to Nazarick to clear up this mess, which is what he does. He's not like a random wimp or anything. He's actually a very clever guy. Emperor Jerniv Rune Farlord El Nix. Yep, that is a light novel anime name for sure.
Good grief.
Anyway, since he's a very smart schemer himself, he quickly realizes that his empire is royally fucked if he doesn't play nice with the guys from Nazarick. So that is what he does, all the while, like, already planning to search for someone who can take down someone like Ainz, which, even though the show hasn't really gone there yet, because Ainz is still the most OP character in this universe, is not impossible, I guess. Jirkniv states to one of his people that there were enough powerful people in that room, and he's talking about the Floor Guardians, of course, that if they all banded together, they could take Ainz down. So his plan for now is maybe to pull one of them to his side, which the show immediately clarifies is a fool's errand, because the Floor Guardians are 100% loyal to Ainz, and have naturally already accounted for such a ploy by Jirkniv. But that doesn't mean that there isn't someone in this world who can take Ainz down, especially if some of his MMO friends made it over, and maybe one of them isn't as big of a dick as he is. Which I hope is something that will happen. I really want the show to introduce an opponent for once that Ainz isn't 2 steps ahead of, because if he isn't Demiurge and Albedo are, which granted is hilarious, especially if he has an, inner freak out about it in his real wimpy voice, but it kind of kills any amount of suspense, like for the sake of keeping up the power fantasy that is Ainz and his character. And it also makes some of the confrontations in the show a bit disappointing. For example, the finale of the season, like Ainz is basically, after some political maneuvering from Jirkniv, Ainz comes out of the closet, so to speak, and declares himself the Sorcerer King Ainz O'Gown, and intends to take over the kingdom of Riestes, which leads to a pretty epically staged massacre, which has got some really scary and unnerving imagery in it, and a confrontation that has been kind of built up from the first season. But since Ainz is so fucking OP, that confrontation can really only go one way, and it does very quickly and unceremoniously, and that, while sticking to its rule set, is still very anticlimactic. Like, I was hoping for more, because this is a very important moment in the show, just, story and plot-wise, and the character he has a confrontation with was there from the first season, and I hoped to see more of that character, and I expected more of him. And I didn't get that, and it was really disappointing. I kind of pegged him for the guy who, could make a serious dent into, Ainz armor and plans, but alas, not even a scratch. Not even remotely. And, it had to happen that way, because he didn't get a significant power boost or anything, that had to happen for Ainz to take a beating. But yeah, that was a real anticlimax, and I was like, okay, that's a shame, man. I mean, there's still some leftovers, from that particular cast of characters that could turn out to be what I am hoping for, what I'm rooting for, but that person was the first one I hoped for would be that, and he's not. He definitely isn't. What is also very anticlimactic is the CG in this third season. My favorite whipping boy. Mm-hmm. Especially for the foot soldiers, goblins, and ogres. It's really bad. This is berserk level of hideous. The CG worked alright in the first season because it was used more sparsely and effectively, especially in the case of Momon's battle scenes for, some neat wild camera pans and such, which is my favorite use of CG in anime. But it has been used too much in the second and third seasons to overlook its glaring shortcomings. And there is a particular moment in the last couple of episodes that should be really awesome in theory and considering how it is staged. But it falls a bit flat because it all looks so hilariously cheap and shitty. There's a pretty prominent GIF out there of that encounter on the web. I don't know how I could make you search, but maybe search for Overlord shitty CG.gif and maybe you'll find it. And the shitty CG doesn't downright destroy the show like it does in Berserk. Like that was really like everything about that show was aces, but the bad CG just dragged it down and made it unwatchable. That is not the case here, not at all. But it's still a sore thumb that's sticking out way too often, and I wish it wasn't in there at all. But yeah, that's where we are at the end of season 3. Ainz is without a question, for me at least, the main villain of the series now. So far, nobody has entered the picture who has even a sliver of a chance to take him down, or even on. The people in his own ranks excluded. Chio came very close in the show's first season. If that cheating shitlord Ainz hadn't used pay-to-win items. Let's not forget that, ever. But the question remains, where do we go from here? Will we get another 26 episode of Ainz slowly taking over this world and killing anyone who threatens the shrine of his stupid MMO guild? I hope not. It's definitely time for an old friend of Ainz to make an appearance in this world. Like, show up on Ainz's doorsteps to tell him that, you know, what an asshole he has become, and then kills him. Or maybe it's going to be a character that Ainz hasn't really accounted for. Like, the show is doing a thing towards the end, which makes me believe that a certain character has the hidden potential and magical prowess to overthrow Ainz eventually, which, given who that character is now, would be pretty damn great. I will admit that, if they really built that character up to be the eventual, like, I don't know, the actual protagonist of the show, or the antagonist of Ainz at least. That would be amazing. That would be great. I'm not sure about that yet, though, if that's what they're going for. But yeah, so they can take their time getting there, but I need to know that this is what's going to happen. Or I can see myself dropping the series on the way, because as much as I like the atmosphere, world, and characters in the show, I don't want to see Ainz come out on top at the end. I don't want to see him succeed. I don't want to he can have his, you know, his kingdom is ruined, everything. But then once he is at the top of his game, of his success, whatever, he has finally become the Overlord. I want someone to be there to take him down. Like, let him see what, you know, that everything he did was in vain and he could have been a force for good, or a much better character. Show it, you know, let it play out all before his eyes in his final moments, and then, like, cut his head off or something. And let him cry for mercy. I don't know. He deserves that at this point. I want to see him ground into the dust and be exposed as the wimpy little entitled shitbag gamer that he is. If the show does that, it will be immensely satisfying. But right now, I'm not sure we're ever going to get that. Ever going to get there. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. It was still mostly fun this time around. I'll say that. I was not bored. I enjoyed my time with the season. I didn't like everything they did with it and with the characters, but I was entertained, even thrilled in some parts and on the edge of my seat. So I'm willing to see where it goes a bit longer, but if Ainz doesn't get some serious opposition soon to even the playing field, I consider this experiment failed.
So we go from all of that to your truly everyday average, absolutely unquestionably normal daily trip to school with Chio's school road.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing to see here.
There's never anything out of the ordinary.
In fact, why would you even watch this show? Nothing is happening at all.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just... So, Chio Miyamo is your average, everyday high school girl. Except her commute to school is anything but, going back on what I just said.
Oh no, we lied.
That's that bait and switch. That's how you get the clicks.
Mm-hmm. And we were so convincing.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes she has odd off-color conversations with her friends Manana and Yuki, encounters with the leader of a biker gang and his troublemaking little sister, or other weird shenanigans. Each day is a new adventure and just trying to get to school and not having to deal with anyone else's nonsense. I mean, this show has a very simple setup, and it's just, a very sort of straightforward comedy show, I felt. I don't know about you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's set in it has the same setting for every episode, and it's Chio going to school. And you would be surprised what things can happen on your way to school. I was surprised, I can tell you. Holy shit.
This show, oh man. So we talked a few seasons back about Hinamatsuri, excuse me, and how it started off pretty funny and then it sort of petered out after the first few episodes. I feel like this show, I laughed at least a little bit each episode. So as a comedy, I feel like it was a success.
Yeah, there are definitely some, let's say, more low-key episodes in terms of comedy, but there's still something witty, imaginative in all of them. And then there are these, highlight, gut-buster, laugh-out-loud episodes in there that are just, beat, great gags by the minute, jokes everywhere, and fun references, and the characters being amazing in how shitty they are, and yeah, it's great stuff.
Everyone is a weirdo for different reasons in this show, and it just plays to how funny it is.
Yeah,
including Chio introducing herself to the fierce biker boss Mayuta Ando under the name Brady Butterfly.
And, that was definitely one of the highlights of the early episodes, that I was rewatching that with two of my friends, after the show started airing and they hadn't seen it yet, and I'd seen it for the second time and I was still lying on the ground and so were they, laughing our asses off. As one of the most, compact, most funny, I don't know how long that scene is. I think 8 episodes, 8 minutes or something, maybe.
Yeah,
I've seen an anime in a while. It's the way things develop and go wrong for Chio in that particularly moment, and how she adapts to that is just so fucking amazing and hilarious and well written, and it's great. And that's definitely the moment where I was firmly hooked. I mean, the first episode was already funny and I liked its quirky, sense of humor immediately. But that was the moment that got me firmly on board how over the top it went, how funny it was, and how well it played its character cards. I don't know. Was it the same for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think what really hooked me in pretty much each scenario in the show was everything was always about how much further out of hand can this situation get, and you never expect it. This show is, you say expect the unexpected. Yeah, that's this show.
Yeah, definitely. And I mentioned before the episode, the series is full of references. It has a very heavy focus on game-related stuff at times. Chio is an avid gamer. Particular kind, which is maybe not that regular in Japan, because she's really heavily into Western games. And that is also a very interesting aspect of the show. The view of this shows on Western and Japanese games is hilarious and insightful. The Japs taking up both your standard Western shooter and its fan base and player base and everything, and how they behave, and your standard Japanese games, and there's a jab at Boys Love Games in there that is super creative and funny. It's an hilarious episode, and gets even dragged out to more coming episodes in regards to how that develops some of the characters and what they do because of that, and it's amazing. I think it had some really, really good stuff if you know your way around with your video games. A lot of like in-depth joke poked at that particular genre that worked really well. Not, just in terms of, hey, here's a reference to a game. Like, what show did that? Just throwing a reference in there, but not really tackling the subject all that interesting. I can't think of the name of it. I think we've mentioned it before on the show.
Yeah, I think, it just...
it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, I think, I don't remember. I don't quite remember. Oh, well.
Shit happens. Anyway, this show is really good at that. I don't know, what was your favorite reference in that regard or thing they did? Can you think of something offhand?
I mean, they came out swinging on the first episode with her being like, I'm going to parkour around these buildings because I play totally not Assassin's Creed. And I'm like, oh, this is the direction we're going. Okay, I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
Or later on when she's like, man, why are Western games so focused about saving America? Well, I finished the game, so you better thank me, America. It's like, what are you on about?
And she, adapting all the different characters, from certain Western games. Like, she becomes basically Chio Fisher at some point.
That's right. I forgot. Oh my God, I forgot that one.
Going full Splinter Cell on everyone's asses. There's an amazing scene. Oh God, that made me laugh so hard. The smartphone grandma that is in front of the shore. It's just fucking... You think, oh, that's so sweet, and where they come up with this very convincing story of why she's sitting in front of that store, and then it turns out, nope, that's not it at all. This show is so good at taking certain things, like setting up an expectation for that, and then completely turning that on its head. Like, making no, that's not at all what's happening here. You were completely wrong. You might have seen this before somewhere else, but this is not it. And that's really good. Like, the comedy derived from that source is amazing and amazingly well put together. Like I said, some of the stuff is slower and, it's not all laugh out loud, but it's at least worth a chuckle. And some scenes, like I mentioned, the smartphone grandma are, hilarious to the max. It's amazing.
The episodes with Madoka, and she wants to do this weird contact sport, kabaddi, and she just really kind of wants to feel up the other girls, and it's out there. She makes everything uncomfortable for everyone else, and it's just the show goes places, man.
It's having fun with it.
Yeah, it really does. I don't know about a complete subversion of expectations every time you watch.
It plays something straight too, but that's why when it doesn't, it works incredibly well. Also,
the show, one thing I liked about it is they break up the episodes pretty nicely, so that you're not lingering on one set of jokes or one gag for too long. You've got these sort of 2 or 3 part vignettes in each episode. So you always get a little something different each time, and you get to see pretty much all of the characters in equal measure, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, and those are some good characters. Like, it's not only Chio, but you already mentioned Madoka, but there is a lot of interesting character work in here. Like Chio's best friend Manana, who's the worst person.
She's a giant shitbag.
Holy shit! Chio is a shitbag too, and there is a reason that those two are friends. Their friendship is very real and also phony, but you can see why these two characters stick together, because they're a bird of a feather. They're the same kind of person in one way or another. But Manana is one step worse than Chio. And the stuff when that doesn't work for her, and it flies in her face, and the way these two try to upstage each other, sometimes actually being friends and then trying to make each other look like assholes for shits and giggles. All of that is great, and it gets developed. I was surprised to see some of the stuff gets payoff in later episodes, and I was like, okay, that's great. Shinozuka, a character that gets introduced much later in the season, her story was weirdly heartfelt, and I was like, oh, this is sweet. Like, okay, this is kind of sad and sweet. Like, I did not expect from this show. And, Ando, who they introduce as this, who feels like this one-off funny character who is just there to get made, turned into a loser by Chio, kinda, or who gets dragged into her web of nonsense, then turns out to be an actually, cool guy and romantic interest for Chio. Well, at least one way.
I kind of gotta wonder about that, because I was sort of looking at their friendship and I was like, well, wait, are they the same age? Because they don't, and that's something that feels like doesn't need to be explored because of the nature of the show, but I just was sort of there, pinging me in the back of the head, like,
it could be.
Should this guy be?
I don't know. I mean, it's like you can never really tell in anime, because sometimes the 14-year-old dudes look like 35-year-olds, and the 30-year-old girls look like 12-year-olds. So I don't know. They never clearly state their ages, or at least Ando doesn't, I think. So it could be. I don't know. But he definitely falls for Chio, or Bloody Butterfly in the beginning. And they do something with that. And also, again, great source of comedy. And one of the things I loved about this show is where, your standard mode tropes of the girls being cute, and, you got these standard scenes where they seem to be like kind of innocent and flustered, and they're drawn all cute and everything. That happens in this show as well, but it's all for the sake of a joke. That at the end usually makes the girls look like idiots or assholes. And, there's a scene where Ando does something sweet for Chio and everything, and she's like, oh my god, I don't know if it was something where she was acting like she was afraid that he's hurt or something, and then at the end it turns out she's only manipulating him, like, for some specific reason. I need to look up what exactly happened there and how that played out, but that was also incredibly funny, where it's like, oh, wait, is she really, like, is she also, like, falling for him? Does she like him? No, there's only one reason she is doing that. Like, there's only one reason, and that's for her own gain. But, the series doesn't play it like that from the beginning. And then at the end, it's like, oh, this is what is actually going on. And that was so nice, because it kind of, I don't know if it was intention, but I think it was. It kind of sets you up to expect, like, the standard behavior you get from other straightforward, more shows where you got a bunch of cute girls who, act a specific way and are supposed to make you, the viewer, root for them, feel for them, maybe in some cases fall in love with them. There are enough people out there. And then in this show, it shows you, oh, you fell for a complete act. This is all an act.
It just shoots you down at every angle, basically.
Exactly. This girl is a shitbag that is playing with you. And the show is. And that's, what some of the other shows in that genre do as well. Because the girls are only, like, drawn that way, characterized that way, acted that way. Because, they want to endear the character to you, to make you pay for model kits, whatever. Like, pull the money from your pockets, like, stuff like that. And this is what the show, what Chio plays to, and makes fun of, and many times during its runtime, like showing you, oh, no, isn't that a cute girl? And look how she's behaving. And then, nope, she's a shitbag. Better believe it. She's not endearing at all. She kind of is, but she also isn't. She's a horrible person, and a lot of that feels like surprisingly real. Like, I felt all of these characters in there, as quirky and as weird and as crazy as their antics become in certain parts, felt really relatable and real. Like, especially Chio and Manana's relationship. I think that friendship, like constantly taking jabs at each other, having probably a truly emotional bond that both of them can't really commit to, but that still is there. but only manifesting in them, being together all the time and taking jabs at each other and making fun of each other. That felt like definitely like some of the friendships that I've had in my life. And yeah, I don't know. How did that work for you?
Kind of reminds me a bit of the really weird quote unquote friendships and relationships that we saw in Konosuba.
Yeah, definitely. There's some of the stuff in Konosuba.
They're all friends, but, they treat each other like idiots. Because why not? That's what you do to friends.
I think Chio is even a bit more mean-spirited than Konosuba in some parts. I mean, I've only watched the first season of Konosuba, to be fair, for until now at least. But some of the stuff Manana and Chio do is really mean. Like, it's really, really, really mean. I don't know how many times I was sitting on the couch and was like, "Oh no! Oh, that's so evil! Oh, you evil person!" It was funny, but it was evil. And but you're right.
Is that there's comeuppance for each other because you got me for this. Oh, just you wait.
The thing I want from Overlord happening, like the evil schemes and machinations biting the main character in the ass, that constantly happens in Chio School Road. Like, damn, everything they got laid out, and it's like, oh, come up with these like giant ass. Elaborate, complicated plans to make themselves not look like idiots, like completely falls apart and makes them like look like the biggest assholes. And yeah, that's done so magnificently in the way it's staged, in the way it's like, in the way it's scripted, in the way it's framed and directed. Like, one of the best things in that regard in the first early episodes that we already mentioned was the thing where Chio meets Ando. The other thing is where she meets the classroom idol character, basically, and wants to become her friend.
Yuki, yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like this weird situation that I can speak that I had the situation before, where she is waving, Yuki is waving at her. And Chio doesn't know how to react because... if you consider that each classroom, in high school has a social standing, there's some people at the top who hang with the cool kids, some are in the middle who are not, really noteworthy, and then there's like the low class. She was kind of like in the middle. She is not really a person that people hang out with. She is like inconspicuous and everything. She's not someone that, anyone would take a second look at. And then suddenly this incredibly popular nice person waves to her, and she's like, wait, is she waving at me? Oh, I want to wave back because I want to become her friend, obviously. And then she thinks, oh wait, maybe someone is behind me who is an actual friend of hers, and if I wave back at her now, I make a complete ass of myself. And that like results into this fucking like her meltdown in her head where she's like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get out of this situation if I don't wave back at her? Because if someone isn't behind me right now and I don't wave back at her, she might get super angry at me and have no chance of being a friend with her ever again. And then she like tries to like process all the different possible angles how she can get out of the situation, like in this instant in her head. And I definitely feel like I have been there before in my high school life. Like that felt so real to me. I was like, oh my god, yeah, this is true to nature. This is amazing. And I have done some stupid stuff to get out of situations like these, and not something like she does. I was never such a creative person. I like my head off to her. Like, holy shit.
You mean literally throwing yourself in the garbage?
Diving headfirst into the garbage. Yeah, all respect to you, Chio. That's an amazing scene. But yeah, it was like, goddamn, that is well done. And felt, again, super relatable. And yeah, I made me like so endeared to this character. Even, especially later in the season, she often shows her true colors. She is not a good person. Well, she is a good person, but she's also a shitbag. You can be both. You don't always have to be an Eins. You can also be a Chio. Good person deep down, but a shitbag on the outside. So, yeah, that's what she is. But, occasionally you see the person she is deep down underneath. And that is, what you... Then I'm also endeared, to be fair, I'm also endeared to her shitbagness. Like, that's also a fun part. I don't know if I would like to hang out with such a person all the time, or, if I would want to be friends with such a person, because that sounds really taxing.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's fun to see her work and do her thing. And, Manana, the same accounts for Manana and something like, and some of these other characters. There are a lot of side characters in the show that are super funny. And stuff gets super dark. Like this one character that becomes the sensei of Madako later, who's like, oh, he's the hidden master of comedy, blah, blah, blah. And they do the standard thing where it's like, oh, this hidden master warrior and stuff. No, it turns out he was like a fucking guy who groped underage high school girls in the train and got imprisoned and then lost his job and is now living as a fucking homeless person. And it's like, and that all happens like in the blink of an eye, where it's like, oh, okay, this guy has a hidden side to him. He's really cool. It's not just a homeless guy. No, he's an actual bad person. He's a really shitty character and a creepy dude. And it's like, what the fuck? Coming out of nowhere. But it's super hilarious. And, the show just never ceased to surprise me with how weird, how, creepy, how, out there, how quirky and how real it could become. I don't know, do you have a favorite moment in this show? Not in terms of just the game references, but, everything, like something, I don't know, certain character development or, a certain mini story or something that happened.
Oh, yeah. I just thought of it. When Chio and Manana find the used cigarette butt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, fucking amazing.
That, and another one of my favorites is, hey, what's something you always wanted to do? I always kind of wanted to be alongside the person in a car when they toss their cigarette out the window. Just toss it right back in the window and say, hey, you dropped this. And she has her opportunity and fucks it up. Spectacularly fucks it up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she fucks it up could be like the subtitle of the show. Yeah. Chio School Road, she fucks it up. Every time. And you would think, like I said, that could be boring. It's like, oh, this is going to go horribly wrong. But the fun part is how it goes horribly wrong. And that's always different and always creative and always incredibly funny. And yeah, I loved this show. I loved how it was set up. Yeah.
It was so much fun.
I mean, I already liked the surrealist humor of haven't you heard I'm Sakamoto, which this show kind of dabbles in that kind of comedy. But Chio goes like further. It's not just non sequitur humor. A lot of the stuff in this show is getting set up for, I wouldn't necessarily call it the long game, because there's not like a plot thread or something that is running through. You only get like 2 or 3 short story bits in each episode, and those could be playing out at any time, kind of. But, you have recurring characters, and those develop, some events make those characters change and develop further and everything. There's not really a through line here, except for Chio herself, maybe. Mm. But, there's enough happening that it doesn't feel that this show is always starting from the same point, from the same status quo. And that's cool. Like, it slowly builds a world around these characters and always shows you something new about this world and new characters in there and how those relate to other characters. So the world building in the show is great as well. Like, there was so much more to the show than I initially thought, and they did so much more with what they had, which is not really a lot, when you look at the premise. I was engaged from beginning to end. Like we said, there were some low-key episodes, but I was never bored. I don't know if you were at some point.
No, I got to laugh at least once each episode, and like I said earlier, I'd consider it a success on that front because that's what it was going for, to be a comedy.
It helps if you are, like we said, invested in video games, because a lot of jokes are derived from that when it comes to how Chio behaves and what her, let's say, what her train of thought is and why it goes a certain way, because she's a lot of her actions are clearly inspired by what she does in her free time.
Her game brain, as she calls it.
Yeah, exactly. Once you go maximum game brain, you can't go back. Yeah, she has burned all bridges in that regard. But that's also a lot of responsible for a lot of her downfalls, a lot of her shortcomings when it comes to character interaction, but also for some of the best comedy. So yeah, if we both of us didn't have that, I don't know if we would have been that engaged with the show or as engaged with the show as we were. The joke thickness, I don't know what the right word is, joke mass, I guess, wouldn't be as high for us, or maybe wouldn't have worked as well. But if you are, part of that particular kind of fandom, at least in some regard, and know your way around games a bit, then you get so much more out of this show. But that's not to say that there's not enough in this show that works aside from that. Like I said, the character interactions and, a lot of the non sequitur humor out there, weird high school comedy stuff, and things that happen that might have happened to you in your real life on your way to school. Some of those things just happen, and some of the people you might have run into as well. Some of those character tropes and they run into, and some of these weird situations those characters get into, maybe you were into as well, at least in some regard or in some variation. So yeah, this just, like I said, this show just feels super relatable. It just feels like, okay, maybe I'm not that main character. I'm not that weird, I hope. But some of the situations she was in sound familiar, look familiar. And, that's always good. It makes you feel for that character. It makes you relate to that character, and it makes you want to see where they go. Even, like I said, if there's not really a coherent story in the show. And
I feel like this was very much a labor of love show because number one, the original author Tadataka Kawasaki, a lot of the stuff he's done before this has just been like doujin stuff, like hentai stuff, let's say.
That explains a lot. Madoka and everything.
Yeah. And the director, the scriptwriter, and the scene composition person were all the same person.
Oh,
so this was probably run on obviously, if you watch the show, you see that the animation isn't always there, but that's fine. Because,
it doesn't need to be. That's not the kind of story that needs super great fluid animation.
Right. So you could tell this was done with a smaller crew, probably because it was done by the studio Dio Media, who we've brought up a few times before with like Aho Girl, Girlish Number. We haven't really talked about some of their other stuff like Hidamari Sketch, Kantai Collection, or Squid Girl, but they do have a decently sized body of work, and I feel like this was just sort of I will work on this for ha-has between other stuff, which kind of makes me feel like it was the sort of production that TQ was, just very small and because we could sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
they seem to be like very familiar with comedy stuff. Like that seems to be their bread and butter.
Yeah.
So they know, like the people working there know how to, adapt certain things. I don't know. Was the source material a manga? Was this an anime only project?
It was a manga. I believe it's still running. There was a volume that came out back in September, so I believe there's still more coming.
That's good, because that means we might get another season down the road. And the story is like set up in a way that, because there's basically isn't a story, that you could always get more episodes and have a lot more fun with those characters and see where they go. So yeah, That sounds good. But yeah, that definitely, and even if we say that the animation is not really elaborate, it never, in my opinion, never looked super cheap or anything.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't take away from it.
No, not at all. Like, there's maybe some scenes with, I don't know, running cycles or something where stuff looks more limited, but, every time it needs to do a certain thing, look a certain way to make a joke work, it does that, like, very effectively. Like, all for the sake, to make the comedy work, everything in this show, like, works really well. Like, the animation is servicing that perfectly, in my opinion. And all the punchlines that need to land do land. And a lot of that is because of the snappy animation, the snappy direction and staging and scene composition and everything. So, yeah, the people who worked on this knew what they were doing. So I think that shines through in this production. And the show is better for it. Yeah, I also like that the final credits of the show are like outtakes, like if it was a live action show, like maybe a Jackie Chan movie or something. And they made like this particular thing at the end where it's like, oh, this was like if these characters were really on set of a show and this was filmed and we got alternate lines for everything, how they fucked up something, and you would hear maybe laughter from the crew and cast at that point. And that was also like a fun little bit. I really enjoyed. I thought, oh man, that's clever. That's cool. I've never seen this before. That's what I thought often while watching this show. Oh, I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. What a great little surprising, endearing show out of nowhere. Like, yeah. I had not have heard any build up for this show before I watched the first episode. I didn't have any anticipation. I had no expectations going into this. And I was so positively surprised. I was, blown away is the wrong word because, like we said, animation is like what?
Yeah.
And, it's a comedy show. It's very simple. But yeah, it's done so well. It shines where it has to, and more than I ever could expect it to.
Mm. Yeah, I remember seeing this listed on Live Chart because that's usually where I look and see what's coming up each season. And I was like, I'll check this out. Maybe it'll be a thing. And, it definitely was a thing. And I think we both enjoyed it quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a top contender for top of the season for me. Best of the season. Sorry, misnaming our own segment here. But we'll see if it actually turns out to be that. We won't. I haven't decided yet. Only if you think this is a spoiler for the final episode of this season. I'm not there yet. So but definitely saying that already means a lot, just in terms of what this show is and how it's put together. And if you want to have a good laugh, if you like comedy, if you like weird, quirky characters, if you like video games, if you like jokes about high school, about high schoolers, about, teenagers doing dumb things in a clever way, not like super dumb. I mean, there's super dumb stuff in there, but that's mainly because the characters act in a very dumb way. But the way that's put together is very, very clever most of the time. So, yeah, please check out this show. It's definitely comes highly recommended, one of the most recommendable shows in this season, especially because it's so short. Each episode is like split up into small little segments. And, there's not really that much fan service stuff in there. I mean, there's, the comedy stuff, which definitely goes there. The episode where Yuki is like kind of not really pressured, but turns out to be an exhibitionist, I guess.
She just needs that little push, and she's like, I'm there, let's go.
Yeah, that happens for her, like, for many things. Guess she's too good for this world, but has a hidden side. But yeah, that is in there. You get a lot of panty shots in this, which I don't know why. I guess that's because where, the creator came from. That's one of the remnants there.
Maybe.
But,
yeah.
But it never is like on the level that it feels gross or super exploitative or anything. Mostly it's used to, for jokes and not played straight or creepy. And if it's played creepy, it's again for a joke. like with the weird homeless guy, the Chikan master. Yeah, and I came out of the show all around with very positive and good feelings, very happy every time. If I was in a bad mood after watching an episode of the show, I wasn't anymore. Which, I think this is, I guess, not all you can ask for, but most you can ask for from a comedy show. Like making you laugh, making you feel good, having a good time, and maybe, giving you in certain episodes more than you expected, and some heartfelt stuff even in there, even if it's incredibly goofy. But yeah, I recommend the show. I think everyone should watch it who likes to laugh. John, you are the same, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something with a little bit of off-color humor, it's great, and you can go check it out on ye old Crunchyroll and Funimation if you are so inclined.
Oh shit, yeah, we wanted to do that. I forgot to mention that for Overlord, I think Overlord Season 3 is streaming on Crunchyroll as well. I'm not sure. I don't know. John, where do I look this up?
Well, hold on. Because.moe. That is the best source. Overlord. Jesus. Crunchyroll, Funimation, Hulu, Yahoo?
Apparently, okay. And that only, I think, is that worldwide or is that only for the US?
You can change your region on because.moe.
I don't know if we have any German listeners, but, maybe it's interesting for you guys as well. I should probably stick to the American audience because this show is in English and everything. And only because I don't hail from the US doesn't necessarily mean that our listeners do so.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm going to reference where shows are airing, it's going to be obviously for the American region, but you can look up where shows are on because.moe, on Live Chart, to a certain extent on Anime News Network. Sometimes they list the licensors and the show credits there. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we've reached a time where it's easy to look up whether or not you can watch any given show.
But still, we wanted to, mention or start mentioning where the actual shows are streaming so that you can easily, without doing some research, go immediately after listening to the show if you think you heard something that sounded good to you, maybe you did in this case with Overlord and Chio, and check it out if you are subscribed to that particular service or it's a free service. You can watch it for free. I don't know, depending on that. I mean, Crunchyroll has a free model, right? I mean, it's just
you just have to wait
with
an extra week to watch shows.
Yeah, but still, by the time
you listen to us,
yeah, we got full. We do full season reviews, so we're that show will be completely available on that given service. So yeah, do that. Check out these services, like John said. Chio is on Crunchyroll, right? Okay,
and there's a simuldub on Funimation now.
All right, I wonder how that is. But yeah, any last words on this amazing little piece of comedy anime?
Nope.
Well, okay, that surprised me, and that's the best way to end this, I guess. See you guys next time.
Take care, everybody.
And that is a wrap on the 63rd episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnimeBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
So long, y'all.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
fighting plastic models against each other, but this time in VR.
And a boy, a maid, and a human-sized cat battle in an interstellar war.